Okay, just a real quick tutorial for a special friend of mine. All right, here we go. Little face. Okay, so for a face, we just have a circle, right? No big deal. We'll draw a line down the center here. Okay. Now I'm going to let this line go a little bit past the circle here, and this is going to represent the chin. So, you know, you don't want it too low down here, you know, because that's like double the length of the circle. It's probably more like, let's see, if this is half the length of the circle, this would be, I don't know, let's try half. So just doubling this length. So let's just make a mark there. And we're going to go ahead and connect. I'm going to get rid of these guidelines so it's easier to see. So we started with a circle, made a line, and then that. We're just going to make a little, even a smaller circle here, so that it represents the rounding of the chin. And now we're going to go ahead and connect with a circle. The circles together. All right, so far we have the starting of a face. Now if we take the length of the whole thing, you know, if this represents the head, and it's, you can see it's kind of egg-shaped, let's divide that in half. So let's bring that all the way over here, and that's where we're going to put the eyes, right? I hope I'm not going too fast here. And if we put an eye, let's just put some circles here where the eyes go, right? They're not too far out this way or too far in towards the center line. They're just, you know, about halfway in that space, okay? Now between, if we bring this line back out, that halfway point, and in this area, we separate this into thirds. So let's go ahead and do that. Now this third is going to be where the nose goes. All right. Let's just draw these two little lines there. We could figure out the nose shape later. And now this line is going to represent the mouth. So let's bring that all the way over here. And there we go. Now we have the basic proportions of what a face could be. Now what we can do is just erase all these guidelines out of the way. And this is obviously not a very pretty looking face right now, but we can use it as a guide, as placement for a face. God, that looks creepy. All right, so before I draw the eye, I'm going to draw how I draw an eye over here. So we're going to take that circle as if we're drawing on there. I'm going to go ahead and put a dot here, and then another dot there, almost like as if you're doing one of those makeup tutorials with the wings or whatever. Often they draw a dot and then complete it. So those two dots are there. I'm going to go ahead and do this, right? And it's going to be a bit cartoonish or animated. It's not really realistic. And I'm going to go ahead and draw a curve like that and bring that up to that same dot, right? And that's a bit of a big eye. That's fine. It's a cartoon. And we're going to draw another circle in the middle of that and shade that in. That represents the pupil. Let's make it more centered. And now we have an eye. What I'm going to do is put a little highlight here. It's going to be a little, you can make it a circle or a square. And then what you want to do is give this a shot. We're going to try and shade all the way down in the pupil area, or the iris, to imply color. But we don't want it to be a flat color the whole way through. We want a gradient for it to fade. So we're going to start dark at the top. It's okay if you go over the black part, and just fade out as you go to the bottom. Right. We could also imply an eyelid up here. Just kind of echoing this same shape. You just do that again up here. And then we want some eyelashes. Now this is totally up to you on how you want to design your own kind of character or face or whatever. And maybe some a waterline for the lower eyelid, and eyelashes going there too. Yeah, no big deal. Here we go. It's pretty easy. Now we're going to do the same thing, or similar to this, over here. And then we're going to also do it on both sides. One trick for symmetry, if you're having trouble getting this on to the other side, is practice your symmetry by just making a rectangle and having a line down the middle. And let's say we could just make up any shape, whatever, it doesn't matter. Let's say, you know, some kind of that, whatever. What you can do is map out the exact reflection by, you know, just drawing a line over, you know, the same thing for all these points. Like each of these points is like a constellation of stars, so you can kind of map it out to the other side. So for this point, you can easily just reflect it and say, oh yeah, obviously, you know, just goes here. And then there's a point here, goes there. And this one goes more towards that way, and like that. And you can just connect those dots and suddenly you see a reflection starting to happen. Now this isn't perfect, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just kind of indicating how to reflect something so that when it comes to reflecting the eyes, it's a bit more accurate. Now if you're working digitally, of course you could just, you know, use the transform tool and select flip horizontal. Anyway, so that's just kind of the basics of how to establish symmetry. So let's just write that. Symmetry. Okay, so over here, we're just going to draw a dot and then another dot. And we're just going to connect them. All right, the same thing with the underside. We're going to draw a pupil, or iris, whatever you want to call it. And a little highlight, and then shade downwards. Now you can see it's a lot less work than this one because it's much smaller. So these lines that we had earlier, that used to be a V, but I erased around it. Let's just bring that back up again. So that they're just nostrils. Right? So we're going to go ahead and reflect this onto the other side. So we can actually just imply that there's a center line here and bring that first dot, and then the other dot kind of lines up with that one. Same thing. All right, now a trick for eyebrows. Often I see a mistake, and it's that, well, here, let me just show how I would do it. So I would just echo the shape that we have here, this curve, which we used for the eyelid here. I would just bring that up, and you know, let's see what it looks like if it's exactly the same shape, as if this line is just brought up here. We sort of have something that looks continuous with the design. We're going to use that as a sort of guide for the eyebrow. Now it looks like this is just coming out of that, kind of like a ripple effect in a pond. So if we take this shape, that right there, and then go like this, there you go, you have an eyebrow. Same thing for here. So we're going to go and reflect this over this line. If you're somebody who does makeup, you already know these tricks, or I hope you do, for accuracy and reflections and whatnot. Now, remember this line we had here earlier on, we had part of these thirds, and this one represents the mouth. What we can do is take these dots that we put in for the eye and just bring them down and just right there. Just bring these same dots down. All right, and those are the corners of the mouth. Of course, this is stylized, so you don't have to assume that all people look like this, because they don't. This is just a cartoon. And you just kind of draw a mouth there. Now I'm going to do that again up here, or over here. So if this is the line that represents the mouth, and then we draw down those 2 dots from the pupils, what we can do is halfway through, you have this kind of curve, and then you can, it's like a little bowl. Then you have another curve here that goes to those dots, and then a curve on top, like that. And so there's a curve here, curve there, and then you can do the bottom lip. You could actually just do kind of like an ellipse, and then depending on the if the person is smiling or whatever, you know, there you go. Then you could put a little darker line here to imply a little bit of a shadow. And you could shade the bottom sides of those lips and make them look. Right. I actually like to not have a line there, just to make it look a bit more natural. Anyway, so back to here. That does not look good. All right, let's draw that line again. There's that curve. The other curves. The ellipse. Ellipse on the lips. What I'm gonna do now is actually, I think the jaw is way too low, at least way too weird looking. So what I'm gonna do is, I think this angle could actually be more like this. So I'm just gonna adjust that real quick. So earlier when I drew that second circle for the chin, I made it too low. So let's bring that up a bit. All right, now for the ears. This line, or this point where the nose is and where the eyes are, if we can just draw a line across this way, that's actually where the ear goes. All right, so same thing on the other side. And of course, all this takes practice. Now for the ear, if this is the side of the head, let's say the left side, and here's the eye, and the nose, eyebrow. And we draw these lines over this way, and that's where the ear goes. So I like to do a kind of bottom earlobe, and then almost like an elf ear, so it's kind of pointy at the top. And then on this first line, I like to give it one of those, and then I don't even know what this thing is called. That thing. And then, you know, you could come up with different shapes, because all ears are different, and then a little hole for the hearing, and then you can put an earring if you want. So that's how I draw an ear. Of course, all of this isn't how I always do things. It's just kind of a quick way to break things down in a way to explain them pretty straightforward and easy. And then the neck. So you can actually take these pupils and draw a line all the way down. And there you go. It's interesting, when you draw a lot of faces, you'll see all these correlations and things lining up with each other. And, you know, this shape I actually just put here. It doesn't have to be that shape, but, you know. Anyway, so I'm drawing a shadow being cast from the chin. And then this part could be tricky, but depending on your taste, I mean, whatever, for hair. So maybe we'll put some bangs and then see where it goes from there. So for bangs, I like to kind of just not have a perfectly straight line, but kind of a curve like that. it depends on whatever you like. And there's going to be a point up here where the hair strands are going to kind of meet. So if you've ever seen a pumpkin, sort of like that, the lines kind of meet at the top. And then we're just going to go ahead and do little triangles here to show that they're separate. And then for the shading for this, what I like to do is this same line that we had, we're going to do it again, but very lightly. And then again here. So that's going to represent the kind of shine. So the bottom half of that, we're going to shade it like this. And the top half as well. And there you go. Now you have bangs. Now I'm going to have a little bit of hair coming down like this, almost like a teardrop, but not really. And we're going to shade that like this. All right. Now we want more hair up top, so I'm just going to draw some hair strands coming off like this. Like maybe her hair's in a ponytail or something, or I don't know. But you don't want just the bangs, because then it looks kind of weird. Anyway, so we could draw the shoulders coming out like that. I'm just going to shade stuff kind of arbitrarily, no big deal. Yeah, that's really as basic as it gets for drawing a face. And I hope that was helpful. All right, enjoy. Clickety click.
This is it. I'm finally a tomato. This is all I've ever wanted.
Set the nightmare alight and dance till these flames illuminate the last redemption beyond our time.
Never believe what just happened. I was at Sephora and I was looking for Pinkleberry Purple, and the lady couldn't find it. Can you believe it? It's like